Israel and Syria are participating in secret back channel negotiations through mediators in the United Arab Emirates. Well, what does this mean for the chaotic Middle East? Well, IDF Major Elliot Chodoff joins us now with the breaking news. So, Elliot, the geopolitical landscape in the Middle East seems to be changing all the time. What can you tell us about this news?
Okay, so first of all, this is a third-party report, so we have to start by taking it a bit with a grain of salt, and sort of let's drill down a bit. The reports say that Syrian officials and ex-intelligence officers from Israel, in other words, not people who are currently on the government payroll, are in some sort of dialogue, and I'm not even sure it's negotiations, but in some sort of dialogue that's being brokered through the UAE. The UAE has an interest; they want to be, part of the game, and that's not surprising. All of these countries are trying to do that. We see it with Oman, we see it with Qatar. So that in and of itself, I don't think is terribly important. I think what we're seeing is a couple of things. First, as I'm sure most people in the U.S. know, Israel, with the fall of the Assad government and the rise of Jolani, who's been very quickly whitewashed, and I'll come back to that in a moment, Israel said, we're not taking any chances. We're going to move in. We're going to grab a buffer zone across the border. We can always pull out, but we don't want to wake up one morning and find a Syrian ISIS-style army sitting on our borders. That's a much more difficult to deal with than that. Of course, the Syrians are not happy with that, and I don't blame them. They shouldn't be. But too bad. On top of that, in recent weeks, we had the attacks on the Druze community, both along the Israeli border and further in the more southeastern Druze areas. Now, it's here again, no secret. We have a large Druze community in Israel, staunchly loyal to Israel. They serve in the army. There are Druze generals. In other words, they're not second string or third string troops. They're part of the decision making team, and they're an important part of it. And of course, they understandably became very agitated and concerned about what was happening to their brethren, and in some cases, literally brethren, extended families in Syria. And Israel took that seriously for a whole bunch of reasons. And we came in, there were airstrikes. And at the moment, at least, the jihadis who were going after the Druze have withdrawn. With all of this going on, Syria clearly has an interest in having some sort of channel. After not only do we not have relations, and here I think it's important to note, we don't just not have diplomatic relations with Syria. Syria does not recognize our existence. We can't even have direct talks because we don't exist. So under those circumstances, some sort of open channel where at least you can get some kind of communication back and forth, and here the Emirates are playing that role.
So in your estimation, this is more of a, hey, you don't shoot me, I won't shoot you. This isn't the beginning stages of another Abraham Accord partnership. This is just, hey, let's set up some back channel boundaries so that we don't accidentally kill each other.
Yes, or at least we don't kill each other beyond the scale that we were already doing it. We can be optimistic, cautiously, without putting any money on it, and say, you know what, it starts with this kind of dialogue, and it goes up a step and another step, and who knows what could come from that. And the Emirates actually, the negotiators actually said that, or the intermediaries. And I don't have a problem with that. But that's not happening tomorrow or next week. In addition, there's another side story to this that's very important. That is that Jolani, who up until he took power in Syria had a $10 million American bounty on his head for being an ISIS, Al-Qaeda leader, murderer, etc., is trying very, very hard to clear himself. Now, is it for real or not? That's, again, time will tell. But in the meantime, he's in Paris now meeting with Macron. The cynics among us, and I'm on that side of it, say, look, you trim your beard, you put on a tie and jacket, and you can get anywhere. Maybe he is sincere. I can't say for certain that he's not. But on the principle of optimists are never pleasantly surprised, I'd rather be pessimistic and be pleasantly surprised.
So with regards to him, I think there's a lot of people that are trying to figure out with the massacre of the Alawites a few months ago, and then with the what's happening with the Druze community in Damascus, is that him directing it, or is that him not wanting to associate? I think a lot of people, as you pointed out very clearly, don't know what to make of him, because he was the leader of Jabhat al-Nusra. I remember you and I were on the border of the Golan Heights, and we were talking about him, and now here he is, a leader of Syria, as you said, clean shaven and wearing a suit. So what do you make of him, Elliot?
The jury's still out. In other words, he's going through the motions. He has plausible deniability. I'm not sure I buy it, but in the sense that, these militias were not really under my control. Now, there's an issue here. Either you're in charge of the country, you're not in charge of the country, and he's trying to play both sides of that. By the way, very common in politics in general. It's the norm in Middle Eastern politics. I say one thing to one group and another thing to another group, and depending on what language I'm speaking, it could be two diametrically opposed messages. So here again, I can see a possibility of, in fact, he's trying to maintain some sort of order and not succeeding. One thing's for sure, trying to rehabilitate his image is part of his trying to consolidate power in Syria. He doesn't need the headache of external forces, whether it's Israel, Iran, or anybody else, Turkey, for their own reasons. Israel has no interest in conquering Syria or controlling it. Iran does, Turkey does. He's first needs to consolidate power, and he hasn't done it completely yet. Yeah, just the open question is, what happens if he does? What happens the next day? And that's what we're all waiting to see. There is no clear answer to that.
And I think that's what if the jury's still out for you, then we're trying to figure this out over here in the United States when it comes to the idea of does a former Al-Qaeda member make for a better neighbor than Bashar al-Assad? Who we're trying to figure out. Now there's these secret back channel talks. I guess in closing, Elliot, there's nothing that's really confirmed, but I guess would we conclude that this is a positive sign?
I would say short-term positive for sure, and long-term is wait and see. In other words, is this just a gambit on his part, as I said, to try to keep things quiet until he consolidates power, and then what happens the morning after? Israel is operating on the assumption that the morning after is not going to be good, but it might be. In other words, I can't rule it out, and we're not ruling it out. In other words, Israel is not trying to weaken his regime. It's trying to maintain its own interests, which are very defensive, conservative, eliminating military capabilities that could threaten us in the future, doing some work to defend or protect the Druze community there, again, for a variety of reasons. But we haven't gone after Jolani or his institutions. See note what we just did to the Houthis in Sana'a in Yemen. We haven't done that to Damascus airport because that's not in our interest. We could always do it if we want to, but there's no desire to do that at this point. It's a wait and see. He's saying a lot of the right stuff. He's convincing people, and we're not fully convinced, but we're not convinced of the opposite either. And that's it. It's a tough situation to be in.
Well, Elliot, this is very fascinating. We're going to obviously have to have you back on. Things change all the time in your neck of the woods. But as for now, Elliot Chodoff, toda rabba.
Thank you.